The $2 bill deserves a little bit of love. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. Find us here on Wednesdays on the video podcast or the video cast at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube or Facebook Live, and the audio drops on Saturday. And if you're a follower and you get your audio from Spotify, Pandora, Apple, you're also getting our companion podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. And you can learn about both of those shows, the one you're watching now and the one I just mentioned, at focusgroupradio.com, where you will also learn about our partners and sponsors, including Deep Discount, who's a partner of ours here on the Focus Group. They've been with us for a long time. We'd love it if you click on their link and have a shopping experience. We like to say it's like going down the rabbit hole. So, Mr. Bennett, Pride is now officially in the rearview mirror, and you shared on TFG Unbuttoned that our friend Scott Seitz put that picture up of a pair of platform lucite shoes or on a garbage can.
Yeah, no, white platform shoes on top of a garbage can with a white can of White Claw, crumpled up Doritos bag, and a red cup, and it said "Pride's over." And I loved it because the white platform heels were they were white, so they were scuffed, and they'd
dirty.
obviously been.
We liked it because they were dirty. Yeah, they're dirty. All right, I got a couple things for you here. Everybody's gotten these text things now and then about click on this link or hi, do you want to have a cup of coffee or something. And there's a scam going around where people apparently play like they're someone's granddaughter or grandson, and they send a text to Nana or Pap-Pap and they want money. And so I found this funny little thing on Twitter, and it said Grandma got one of those texts from an unrecognized number, purportedly from our oldest son who had lost his phone. But because he was overseas in the wild, she was concerned it could be true. So here's how it went. The text says, "Please, could you make the payment for me on my behalf? I'll pay you back as soon as I can get back onto my mobile banking app." And the grandmother says smartly, "What's the name of our oldest cat?" And then the person responds, "There's no need to ask me silly questions. Ah ha ha." And she goes, "Please answer." And then the answer comes in, "Mittens?" ? Nice try.
It's a good one, though. That's pretty good because we had a mittens.
And so the guy says, "Fair play to the scammer for having a punt." Mittens?
Yeah. Might as well throw a Hail Mary, see if it hits. I mean, mittens is pretty good.
And the other thing I wanted to mention that was happening in June is Showtime was rebroadcasting the complete series for Queer as Folk and the L Word. And, Bob and I ended up watching a fair amount of both. And it was interesting because in both cases, our favorite seasons were the first or second. And frankly, for me and Bob, we preferred the L Word seasons 1 and 2 over any of the Queer as Folk. And I know people love the American version of Queer as Folk. Bob and I adore the British version that we saw many years before they did the American one. But, looking back on this, Tim, this is the early 2000s. Showtime was putting out some pretty progressive programming. And I know you at Subaru had a hand in the L Word as well.
Yeah, I don't have Showtime, so I didn't know that they were doing that. But that's interesting that they ran them. It's funny to watch some of those, and you'll see clips or you'll see programming now or then. And it definitely is. There definitely is it's a time capsule, right?
Yes.
There's definitely a feeling of what's going on or what's happening. And I would say that those early 2000 programming, and you and I saw it from the advertising standpoint, whereas in the beginning, in the mid 1990s or whatever, when it was just Subaru, Absolute, and American Airlines, by the time we got into 2001, 2002, I think you had shown a slide, there were 12 manufacturers, automobile manufacturers, that were actually actively trying to pursue the LGBTQ consumer. And I think right now there's probably 2, if that. And they're using influencers, which is always a disaster. But so, yeah, it's we talked about it on our podcast, TFG Unbuttoned, that in many regards, a lot of companies have gone back into the closet for fear of retribution or just not knowing what they're doing.
Well, true. And on the L word, it was really interesting to watch reality become fiction because the L word featured a storyline where a pro tennis player gets sponsored by Subaru, and they actually used some of the advertising we created in some fake magazines and stuff. And, that was, I would say that might have been the zenith or the pinnacle of our achievements with that program. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think that was, doing the custom creative on Logo, on Logo TV, when there was big promise for Logo, not what it is now, reruns of Benson or whatever they're doing.
And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, yeah.
Right. But I think that was, I also think some of the other work, if I was myself as a corporate side doing the highlighted work, one of the things I was most proud of was doing the program pushed Subaru to be the very first automobile manufacturer to offer domestic partnership benefits to employees, followed by the following week when Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler followed suit. So to me, that was a big moment for us, being a very small brand at the time, or a niche brand at the time, to be able to move the needle like that, I thought was important. But no, there were a lot of, I think the L word was great. And hey, listen, to this day, Subaru is still used as SNL brings it up with Outback, and Billie Jean King did a skit with it, and for Sochi Olympics, it's Question on Jeopardy. I mean,
it's pretty amazing that it got woven into the cultural fabric. Now, a different cultural touchstone was hit this past Friday. Many of you may have seen the news that adult film star Austin Wolf was charged in a New York City court on child pornography charges. It was the result of apparently a long-standing investigation and an FBI raid, actually, where they took electronics and they found all sorts of images and stuff on an SD card. And as of Friday, the judge in that case did not allow him to be home with a ankle bracelet on, but I think he's in the Brooklyn detention facility, which is got a bad reputation here. In fact, it's on lockdown right now from a riot that happened 7 or 8 weeks ago. But, I sent Tim and I exchanged notes about this, and Tim's just said smartly, you could say it, Tim.
No, I thought, how did he think he was never going to get caught with this, right? And that's what I often wonder about a lot of people that are doing this, the child pornography or these underage shows where they would show The Predator or something where somebody's trying to hook up with an underage person. You're going to get caught. It's wrong. And I just don't understand how people think that they're immune to it. But apparently, the biggest shock to me with Austin Wolf, as I was reading the comments, because I didn't know a lot about him other than he kind of had this ideal 6'4" frame body that people would aspire to, I suppose. But what I was most shocked about was a lot of the comments where people said, "Oh, I'm not surprised," or "It's about time."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then you and I poked around a little bit to see that actually he did seem to have a fetish or a thing for smaller guys
Younger.
that might be 18 and 3 minutes old. So, well, he's got a long, different life ahead of him if he survives.
Yeah, and that's how Tim and I concluded the conversation. I said, in a heartbeat, the life he had is officially over, and now it's on to something else that's going to be. And very weird stuff. Yeah. All right. How the show works is we catch up as we've just done. We do a little segment called Caught Our Eye, where we bring news items to each other's attention. Usually they're very different. Today we're going to follow that with a business birthday, the only show in the universe that does that. And in the second half of the show, I came across an article about the $2 bill. And Tim had a very smart idea that we are going to invite onto the show to join us today. A fan of the show, but also someone who knows a lot about the $2 bill, and that would be Mark Pipkin. He's the retired director, Reserve Bank operations at the Federal Reserve. He oversaw when he worked there, cash cycle supply chain activities, currency distribution, banknote design, and features development. I think we're going to enjoy speaking with him. So without further ado, Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So I was poking around a number of articles, and you and I have talked and actually got to with Volkswagen Drive, one of their first electric cars out west. and ran into what seems to be the big barrier to people now buying or wanting to continue with the electric car. So this headline is nearly half of American electric vehicle owners want to go back to gas-powered cars. And it goes on to say a significant share of Americans who own electric vehicles have buyer's remorse, according to new data from McKinsey and Company. They had just released a study. They had spoke to over 37,000 consumers worldwide and asked them in what they're calling their Mobility Consumer Pulse Test for 2024. And it came back that 46% of EV owners in the U.S. particularly were very likely to switch back to owning gas-powered cars. So while 54% were happy with their cars, 46%, or almost half, intend to go back to gas-powered cars. They said the only other country that had a higher percentage was Australia. Australia had 49% of the population that wanted to go back or wants to go back to gas-powered cars. This survey took place mostly in Brazil, China, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Norway, of course, the U.S. and Australia. The average across all countries surveyed, the average of respondents who said they want to ditch their EVs is about 30% or 29 point something percent. You want to guess what the biggest reason is why people want to go back to gas-powered vehicles?
I'm sure it's the issue of either not thinking ahead, charging. I think it's probably charging.
Exactly right. So the biggest reason EV owners cited for wanting to return to gas-powered vehicles was lack of available charging infrastructure. 35% cited that as the biggest reason. The second biggest reason was they thought it was going to be cheaper to own the EV, and they said the actual cost was too high, which I was surprised about. And then the third reason, by nearly a third, 1 in 3, said that their driving patterns, particularly with long-distance trips, was too affected by the range of the EV. So if you wanted to go 400 miles, you probably had to stop for an hour somewhere. And so that was also a barrier. So McKinsey concluded that there's still a long way to go. What was shocking to me, that at the end of the article, they said during the Biden administration, as we know, had passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And the legislation in 2021 committed billions of taxpayer dollars to building 500,000 charging stations in the U.S. by the end of this decade. Do you want to guess how much have been built in the last 3 years? These are federally funded charging.
So they're supposed to have 500,000 stations, right?
So 500,000 charging stations were to be built by the end of the decade. 3 years later, so we're in 2024. How many federally funded charger stations do you think have been built?
I'm going to go with 150.
And you would be amazing. 7.
I did 150 because I thought 7 is an insult. Is this
they
a
said the slow
issue,
slow progress has sparked condemnation from both sides. So the right and the left, the Democrats, Republicans, everybody's going, what's the hell's going on? We've got maybe you and I should open. Here's one that can't get away, John. The charging stations. Of course, you and I would open them, and everybody's switching back to gas power. But so apparently there's billions of dollars if you're one of these, and we know somebody who left the cannabis business to go open up some charging infrastructure. And essentially what it is these are these huge charging stations. Instead of gas pumps, there's the chargers. Yep. And they have very high-end convenience stores. So you can lounge, wait around, grab a lunch, have a deli sandwich, whatever you're going to do. But it's kind of a modified or a high-end rest stop while your car's charging. But apparently, maybe it's land. Maybe people can't find the land. I don't know. So anyway, only 7.
Tim, I'm shocked. And I think it could be what you just said about siting these things could be difficult. You know, a lot of the prime real estate off freeways, et cetera, has already been claimed by, some of the big chains, the gasoline chains. I think it's inevitable that we're going to have EVs, a huge amount of EVs on the road in the next several years. But I think a lot of things have to catch up with that. And you and I have always pegged infrastructure as one of the big ones. You just can't, I think because of gas's ubiquity, you could randomly pull off the highway almost anywhere in the U.S. and find a station. It might not be the brand you buy, but you're going to find a station. This is a very different thing. It's like when I was driving my diesel car, I remember we had mapped out in our head where the diesel stations were, and they weren't
Right.
as ubiquitous as they are right now. I think the other thing that has to happen with EV, and it's starting to, is battery technology needs to. They need to have a lighter battery with a longer range. I don't know how they
Right.
always achieve that, and it's new materials, et cetera. And I think we're getting there. But let's say you had a car that had like an 800-mile range. That would be a total game changer, right?
Right, because then, right, you're exactly right. Because you're not likely to drive 800 miles in a day
In a
without
day,
stopping
no.
somewhere for rest. No, you're exactly right. You and I stupidly, and I say stupidly because we thought California was a land of everything first. And when we went out to California, to San Francisco, of all places, to try the EV for Volkswagen, you and I ended up having to take the car back to the dealership every night so it could charge and then take a Uber to the hotel.
Yeah.
Not convenient. We couldn't
No,
find a
and
charging station
it
in
turns
San
out-
Francisco.
Yeah, well, and we chose that because we thought it was the most progressive country.
We thought there's going to be chargers everywhere. Going to be extension cords all over the streets, right?
We were told
Plug 'em
later,
in.
though. Yeah, we were told after this whole thing. Someone said, you really should have gone to L.A. There's charging stations all over L.A. We're like,
Baloney.
really?
Yeah.
And I think there are, but we just never connected that. So, yeah, look, I'm thinking our next car could very well be EV. It depends on the brand and the make. I'm keeping an eye on it, but we're another year or so away from a swap out. But yeah, I think when it gets to the point where I know I can charge, it's going to be quick, and I can do it at home or here. Then it's going to be I think it's going to be a stampede, or the market changes.
Well, the fear is for you, and it's the same with me, is that you could make the trip from New York
Yep.
City to where you need to go. However, there have been times, and it may be once every couple of years, but there are times where there may be a major accident or something, and you're sitting for 3, 4, 5 hours on one of
yeah.
our highways.
That's
Then what
happened.
happens? Then
That's
what
happened.
happens? Right.
We sat on a road here that we were 4 miles from our apartment. We sat for 4 hours because of a flash flood.
Yeah.
People ran out of gas on that. There were people pushing their cars off the road when it finally cleared up. So yeah, you have a great. It's not. It's a plan for the worst, hope for the best. You hope it never happens, but
Yeah. So what caught your eye?
What caught my eye is mainly visual, so I'll be doing a lot of description here. But I found this online. It's something called boardpanda.com. They had this article about an artist who creates fake toys, but he does the ad for the toy. I think he probably uses AI to generate it. But they look like these ads that we used to see as kids, right? So one of them here, first let me tell you the artist's name. Let me go up here, scroll up. The guy's name is Rosenberg, and I think everywhere in the article they just call him Rosenberg, so that's possibly he's Spanish. And this is a series he did called Forbidden Toys. They're wild and controversial. So the first one, there's 30 of them. I only picked 3 to go through. One of them here, it's the picture I'm showing. It says, "My cool confessions. Tell him everything." And there's this little plastic chapel with the doors open. It looks like a priest or a monk with his hands folded. And there's a kid next to it, like laughing, like I'm going to give confession now. I think that might be a coin slot below the priest. I'm not sure if that's what I'm seeing here.
Well, probably if it's Catholic Church, you got Catholic money, right?
Gotta
Put your
pay to
envelope
have
in.
your sins washed away.
I love this as a real toy. I think this could be this has merit, don't you?
Oh, Tim, wait till you see the other ones. These to me, like I couldn't. And it's done in this way where the pink is really pink.
Yeah.
The blues are really blue. It's like this childish thing. So the next one here is called My Little Sweatshop. Remember My Little Pony? And it shows
horrible.
this girl sitting next to this plastic, and there's little dolls in a row, and they're all in front of sewing machines. And then above them are little dresses and skirts. And she's laughing and smiling and pushing little buttons. And the My Little Sweatshop is done in what they call balloon type. It's got
This is
that.
horrible.
Yeah. But look, Tim, this is horrible as he laughs and laughs.
And they're all there making their widgets.
They're making
The
little things in
sweatshop.
their little. And then this last one I pulled here is called Life Support Elmo. And it shows Elmo laying in a hospital bed with a thing on its nose, like, one of those oxygen feeds. And behind him are a couple of a toy EKG monitor and something else. There's an IV bag. And then in the lower right corner, Elmo's got his thumb up and he's looking right at you and he says, "I'm sick." Life Support Elmo. They had if So I'll send the link to Tim so you could, or I'll post it on Focus Group Radio over at Facebook so you could see all the different concepts this guy came up with.
Yeah, we'll have to post these to the Facebook page. These are hilarious.
Yeah, they're really hysterical. One of them was called Prison Riot, and it's called Will You Survive? And it looks like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots meets that game Stay Alive, the survival game where you put marbles on a board, whatever.
Oh my God.
I mean, I downloaded a whole bunch of these, and I just thought, I don't know if I could describe them all, but Tim's reaction is exactly the reaction you're probably going to have. So I found this at Board Panda, boardpanda.com. We'll post the link. But it's called Forbidden Toys, and the artist's name is Rosemberg, or Rosemberg, and he's Spanish, and he just came up with this crazy idea, and I think it's brilliant. So that's what caught my eye.
It's hilarious.
Glad you like it, Mr. Bennett. All right, without further ado, let's have a business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So I struggled a little bit to find a birthday. Today's date is July 3rd, but I actually found one for July 4th, Mr. Nash.
Ah, okay.
And so he was born, this is Edward Craven Walker, born July 4th, 1918. He died August 2000 at 92, was a British inventor and invented what he called the astro lamp, or later known as the lava lamp. So he's the inventor of the lava lamp. He was a pilot in World War II. And he flew a de Havilland Mosquito over Germany. And they said he took photographs from an unmanned plane, or an unarmed plane. And after he got out of the military, he used to hang out at this country pub in Dorset, England. And the pub, he said, had this contraption made by one of the regulars named Donald Dunnett, who had since departed. But it was a one-off device which used two immiscible, which means they can't be mixed, fluids as an egg timer. So he had these two fluids that really couldn't mix, but they used them as an egg timer. And they said, while it was very rudimentary, Craven saw potential in this item and decided to perfect the liquids inside of it and create a lamp. So he set up a laboratory in a small shed where he mixed the ingredients together of different sizes. And he was trying to figure out what the best container was to mix these for the shape of what would be the lamp. And if you're watching online, John has posted treetop orange squash bottles, which is a drink or a mixed drink of liquid, which you would mix with water or carbonated water to make a soda in the UK. And he discovered that they were the best containers in terms of shape for this lamp. So that's how the lava lamp got its shape, because based upon these two liquids he had, this was the best shape. And so he was able to create the bottle or the glass for what was known as the lava lamp. So he and his wife, Christine, set up a company called Crestworth. They decided to start producing these lamps. They operated from a small building in Poole, Dorset. And he said of the lamp, I think it's going to be popular. To me, it's like the life cycle or the cycle of life. It grows, it breaks up, it falls down, and then it starts all over again. So the lava lamp was very popular in the 70s, and they often equated it with the hippie style. And but he said in the 80s they began to fall out of fashion. They scaled back operations, but they still built the lamps, and they gained additional popularity in the 90s and 2000s when people had a nostalgic feel for them. And there was a young couple in the 90s that contacted him, Granger and Mully. It was a married couple, and they said, we'd like to make these lamps. Can we partner with you? He said, sure. And so in 1992, Craven and his wife and this other couple teamed up, and the younger couple eventually bought out the Walkers and took over making lava lamps, which are still made 60 years later in the same location they were made originally in the UK. They changed the name of the company to Mathmos. And he spent some time consulting with them to perfect. He was always working on perfecting the fluid. One quick thing about him, he was a nudist. He and his wife were nudists. And they loved to hang out all the time.
The way you dropped that, like one quick thing.
So he took a lot of his money, he and his wife, and they made, in the 50s and 60s, they said nudity in film was taboo. So to invade the censors, you can show as much nudity as you wanted as long as you didn't show pubic hair. So as a result, he became a pioneer of this genre that he developed or created a couple movies, one called Traveling Light. which was the first nudist film. And he developed these films with the thought of he would show them at nudist clubs or other clubs to get people interested and persuade them into the naturalist or naturist love of nudism, or to being nude. He had a couple of other movies that flopped, and he ended up losing most of his archive of his nudist movies when a tree fell on his garage while he was visiting a nudist colony in Spain. So
there's some weird irony there, right?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, he died of cancer in Hampshire in 2000. He's buried in a small cemetery in New Forest. But it was funny that he and his wife were huge nudists and were trying to take the money from the lava lamp to create this nudist lifestyle or naturist lifestyle. The movies didn't do so well, but they said you can still see him. Traveling Light is probably one of his most famous, was done in 1959 under the pseudonym Michael Kettering. So maybe you have to pull that up in deep discount. See if they've got it.
Traveling Light. We all know what that means. You can just bring a toothbrush, right?
Right. So that was our business birthday. Do you have a lava lamp?
No, I had friends in school who had them. I used to be fascinated by them. I've always enjoyed them as one of these like little things you just plug in and turn on and it does its thing, right? And I would never have associated it with being invented in England.
No, I wouldn't have either.
You know, I totally think it's one of those like 60s, 70s things, right? With a shag carpet and a beanbag chair, you're all set.
When I was a little kid, my dentist had one, and I was fascinated.
Yeah.
And my mother ended up getting me one, and I have a couple now somewhere. Brian Roman had given me one, and God
Are they
only
different
knows where
sizes?
They are. Yeah, they probably ended up at the yard sale.
Oh, see, you could have done a grouping. Bob would have encouraged like a little grouping of the different sizes. It would have been like.
Well, you've seen the house, John. How would that work here? I can only shove so much in my little back room that I have.
You can only have so much of your personality on display at once in the
one
house.
time.
True.
In between Mary and Jesus and the bronzes.
And the Epiphany.
Anyway, maybe I'll put it on the piano. So, hey, we're going to take
Which
a
no
quick
one
break.
plays.
I know. You know, I do. I walk by every day. I purposely hit the key just so that it doesn't go dry rot. As John said, we've got a special guest joining us today during our Shop Talk segment, Mark Pipkin, who's retired director of Reserve Bank operations at the Federal Reserve. And John found this great article about the $2 bill. As you know, we're fans of the $2 bill, so we thought, why not have Mark Pipkin, who's been a fan of our show since our SiriusXM days, to come on and talk to us a little bit about the $2 bill and some of the issues as it relates to this article that John found. So stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got our Shop Talk with our special guest, Mark Pipkin.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. Focusgroupradio.com is the URL for our site, for our show, and you'll learn about TFG Unbuttoned, our companion podcast there as well. But as I promised at the top of the show, we have a shop talk today dealing with the $2 bill, and it's an article that I found online. It was from a bank teller called 9 Reasons You Should Never Ask for $2 Bills, and she had some things like there's not room in the tray, they put a wrench in the flow, they baffle people. Are they real? Are they fake? Most people who get them save them. They can be hard to get rid of. They slow down transactions. They're just not worth the fuss. But we actually disagree on the focus group. Tim and I have always loved the $2 bills. And so joining us is a friend of the show, Mark Pipkin. His official title is, he's now currently a retired director of the Reserve Bank operations for the Federal Reserve, where he oversaw cash cycle supply chain activities, currency distribution, banknote design, and features development. And he's currently head of strategies and risk management, cash cycle supply chain consulting. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Tim, for inviting me on.
So we are huge fans of the $2 bill. I've always liked them. Now, I was going to assume that they've only been in circulation for like 2 decades, but you could correct us.
So that's interesting. Believe it or not, the $2 bill has actually been around since 1776 and was first issued during the American Revolution, and then became a regular printed currency in 1869 when the Bureau of Engraving started printing U.S. currency. It had a brief hiatus where it was not printed from 1966 to 1976, and they stopped printing it because it was just not used regularly. In 76, they redesigned the back for the bicentennial, and they replaced Monticello from the reverse side and put an engraving of
So the signing of the Declaration.
John Trumbull's declaration, signing of the Declaration of Independence. So I'm a big fan of the $2 bill as well. In fact, I went to the farmers market here in Rehoboth Beach on Tuesday, and I was given $6 in change in $2 bills.
No, you weren't. I must have gone right before you.
Wow.
I'm the only one using twos in town, I think.
Well, one of the farmers gives out everything is priced at $8, so most people give them a 10 or a 20, and that is the change that I've received.
So, and Mark, and thanks for joining us. As you know, and you and I have talked offline as we have with John about our love for $2 bills, and every time I ask bank tellers for them, it's usually some little kid that's come in that grandpa or grandma gave them twos, and they'll say, "Well, we have 6 of them," or whatever. And I tried. John and I, one year we got $400 worth, and it was a big deal. We had to order them from the bank, from the Federal Reserve, I guess. And so, I guess my question is: did you guys ever discuss normalization of the two, or why don't people use the two from your perspective versus what the article said? Do you have any thoughts?
I do. The demand depends on how much each denomination has grown. So basically, the Federal Reserve Bank determines growth based on how many bills are distributed versus how many they get back or are returned. When a bank has more cash on hand than they need, they return the excess to the Federal Reserve banks. If people are frequently using a denomination more than others, it's sent back at a lower rate. If banks return a denomination less often than it's anticipated, then it's experiencing growth. Because other bills are, see more use, they're more likely to get torn, faded, worn, etc., and they're more likely to grow and be replaced on a more regular basis. Since customers don't often use the $2 note, there's very little demand, and what is used doesn't experience the same wear and tear as other bills. The latter kind of makes it unlikely that the Federal Reserve Bank would deem the $2 bill unfit for circulation because they're pretty pristine. And these were printed, these are still 2017A. Steve Mnuchin was the Treasury Secretary. So, they're just not used often.
But you said there's is there 157 million made a year or something crazy? I mean, do you know? You don't have to know the exact number, but we still print them.
Actually, the last printing, I did pull this up. The last printing was 2022, and they printed an order of, I think, 204 million dollars, 204 million notes.
That's a lot. Notes. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. 121,600,000 of those notes were printed. So they're printed every few years. All of the notes are printed at the Fort Worth facility at the Western Currency Facility in Fort Worth, Texas. And the last printing in 2022, the Reserve Bank had the Bureau of Engraving and Printing print 204 million of them for them.
So, did they really just end up in people's like like here's a secret bill in my wallet or something, because I never receive, unless I ask. If I go to the bank and I say to the teller, do you have any $2 bills? They will happily hand them to you.
If they have them, they will hand them to you. Correct.
If the last time Tim got us a bunch, he had to order them, and I'm thinking we should order them, Tim, because I like the two. In fact, I give them out all the time. Like when I pick up my car at the garage, sometimes I'll give the guys a tip, and it used to be a $2 bill. I got known as the $2 bill guy. They would give it to their kids, or they would, and they would teach. One guy said, he goes, I give it to my son all the time, and I teach him that it's a real bill, it's real currency, make him spend it. It's just such a funny thing. So, total non sequitur from the $2 bill. A couple weeks ago, Tim had an article about a man who went magnet fishing and pulled up an old safe from somewhere out in Queens, and inside of it was $100,000 in currency. And it was all muddy and dirty and stuff. And I said to Tim at the time that they could probably recover the money, because as long as they could recover a serial number, the Federal Reserve would then take that, retire the serial number, and give them back a new bill. Is that how that actually works with damaged currency?
Damaged currency, you can send it via certified mail or deliver it in person during regular business hours in Washington, D.C. To the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. And they have a mutilated currency redemption unit at BEP. And the currency examiners are best able to determine the value when it has been sent to them. And what they do, they forensically go through waterlogged, burned currency, and are able to identify fairly close to its actual value in what they are given. So there's a form online at www.bep.gov, and if someone has buried their currency instead of put it in the bank, and it just happened to decompose in their crawl space, then they could send it to the Bureau of Engraving in Washington, D.C., and a currency examiner will go through and determine how much is there, and then issue them a check for the value of that currency.
What if you had a RIP bill and you only had? Could you present a half a bill to the mutilation group, and will they pay that off?
Probably not a half a unit. If it was more than a half, if it was, say,
3/4,
then it would be replaced.
Because I knew a friend of mine, acquaintance, he used to rip the dollar bills in half, and he would go to the strip club and he would hand them. That way, he felt he was doing more than more than enough. And
Tim, are you serious? That is really shady.
Totally serious. Of course, it's shady. But he said, they're going to eventually get, they're going to have to tape the bills together. But I used to laugh about it. One quick question about the two, though, and I wonder, why do you think the two is so popular in Canada? Because the Canadians use the two, and Americans that go there, I know as a little kid, I used to always use the two. I know the euro doesn't have a $2 denomination, but they have a $200 denomination, and they have a $500 denomination. So when the Federal Reserve is working with money and your work, because you've also worked with international or
Correct.
with foreign currencies, did you guys ever wonder why, or it just was not talked about because, as you said, the bill's not used a lot? But I wonder why Canada seems to have adopted the two, but we haven't done it here.
I do not know. I actually do not know why.
Well, that's a good answer.
That's a perfect answer.
Unless they're heading across the border to Niagara Falls or going shopping
right.
at Costco or something.
And the other thing that people have brought up that I've read is that they're thinking about phasing out the dollar bill in the U.S. and doing a coin like they do in the U.K. or the euro. Did you guys talk about that? Because coins last longer of doing. We've never been successful in the U.S. with a dollar coin, right? We've never been successful.
There is one in existence. In fact, there have been two. There's the Susan B. Anthony dollar coin and the Sacagawea, and neither American people or American men do not want change in their pocket. And that's
No, but
So
Mark-
well said. So well
Right,
said.
but Mark, I
Perfect.
think you also designed it the size of a quarter. New York City gave me a whole bunch of change with the Sacagawea dollar, whatever, but I thought they were quarters. I lost them.
You got an aggrieved customer, Mark.
So the one other thing, Mark, that I thought maybe you could help us with the Federal Reserve. John and I have talked about this since our years on Sirius XM. I thought we were just coming out of Pride, June Pride.
Yes.
And I thought in order to increase the use of $2 bills, maybe we should have all the LGBTQ people in June use $2 bills when they're using cash or currency to let people know that there's spending power and the power of the LGBTQ community. However, recently this year with all the backlash, I said to John, are people going to be fearful of the two and say it's gay money? But would the Federal Reserve want to come up with an idea to say, let's try to use more twos, or they don't care?
If there was demand, they would order it. And the Bureau of Engraving and Printing we do an annual currency order every year and present it to the Bureau of Engraving, and they print based on what notes are, what the demand of each note is, and it's put into circulation.
Would they sponsor us if we tried to drive?
I don't think they can sponsor you, but I do have two examples.
Well, Postal Service sponsored Lance. Why can't the Federal Reserve sponsor the focus group? And we're going to push twos.
Well, the Jefferson Hotel, which is a very nice historic hotel in Washington, D.C.,
right.
They routinely order $2 bills, and they use them for marketing and guest promotions. And other Jefferson-related businesses do the same. There's a funny story in the late 1970s. There's a big football rivalry between Clemson University and Georgia Tech. And the governing body who schedules these games threatened to not have Clemson come to Atlanta to play the games. So Clemson supporters wanted to go to Atlanta to play this game. So they started using $2 bills, and they would stamp them with a big paw print on them, a Clemson Tiger print on them, and they showed that they were in circulation all over the stadium, right, to kind of gauge the popularity of that game. And some Clemson University boosters still to this day, when they go to Atlanta for the game, utilize the $2 notes.
You know, Tim, I wonder if the $2 we maybe next year we should do Happy Pride, the Pride Leprechaun stamp on the $2
stamp
bill.
on the $2.
I guess
are you allowed to do that, Mark?
Well, it's defacing currency. Technically, you're not allowed to deface currency, but we've all received change from the grocery store that has some odd stamp on it.
Love
right.
you, Grandma, or someone handwrites on the. So
right.
even handwriting on the bill that's defacing currency.
Yeah, I mean that just shows that the reason it's in circulation is that it hasn't been returned into a bank, so it's continually being passed from one customer to the next.
To another, yeah.
But I think it would be a great marketing tool for the LGBTQ community to.
So what do you think is the most counterfeited U.S. bill? Is it the 100 or the 50?
It's certainly not the
20?
one.
It's not the one. In fact, the $1 and $2 notes cost about the same to produce. So the reason the $100 note was redesigned with security features was at one time the most internationally counterfeited U.S. banknote, where now it's gone down to the 20. So domestically, it's more
right.
a 10 and 20, and I've been out of that for a couple of years now. But we used to get statistics regularly from the Secret Service on what notes they pulled out of circulation that were deemed counterfeit.
Well, North Korea was famous for it, right?
Yeah, there was a lot. There were state-sponsored counterfeiting and they would counterfeit mostly the $100 notes.
Wow.
Have you seen some that are really good counterfeit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one more question about about the bills in general, and I had seen a picture, and I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody had shown a picture of I think it was a $10,000 bill or something. Do we have? What are the denominations of U.S. currency? Do you know? I mean, are there such things as 500s and thousands, or is that just made up?
No, there were large banknotes, current banknotes in circulation, and that are printed on a regular basis are 1, 2, 5, 10s, 20s, 50s, and $100 notes.
Okay.
During the Y2K, we contemplated issuing a $500 note and a $1,000 note, which was legal tender. $1,000 notes, $5,000 notes, $10,000 notes, $100,000 gold notes were legal tender before we had modern banking wire transfer systems in place. Those notes are still legal tender, but they're probably worth more than the value if they are in circulation. But the denominations that I mentioned were the only ones that are routinely printed. And we never did go forward with the $500 note and $1,000 note. But not to say that
might happen someday.
Yeah. Well, the most counterfeited euro is the high denomination euros. So, we have a $500 euro.
All right. Well, we've been talking with Mark Pipkin, who's retired director of the Reserve Bank operations at the Federal Reserve. And Mark, it sounds like we've got a lot of work to do to normalize the two.
I'm up for the task personally.
Yeah, we're
Happy
still going to do it.
Here's a $2
and
bill.
Mark, there might be, listen, I know you government people take payola from what we understand, and so maybe they can do something with
take payola.
maybe there's something we can do with the Federal Reserve to push the two. I think it's an admirable thing, don't you?
It's demand related.
Okay, well, we got to get more demand.
You got the answer right there, Tim.
The farmers market in Rehoboth, the farmers market in Rehoboth, and us at the Abbey giving them out. John's not going to do it. So,
a lot of boys got my $2 bills.
Mark, thanks for joining us today in the Focus
Thank you,
Group.
Mark.
We appreciate it. We've talked about the two a lot, and so when John found this story, we said we might as well bring in somebody who worked with it and worked with currency on a daily basis. So we appreciate it.
Well, it's funny that the farmers market is giving it out of change. So
I love it. And
you'll
I
have
love
to walk
pricing.
down the street, Tim, tomorrow.
This week, I will. I'll do it. So, hey, thanks everybody for joining us here in the Focus Group. We appreciate the time you spend with us. As John mentioned, be sure to find all of our media housed at focusgroupradio.com, including our companion podcast, TFG Unbuttoned. Thanks also to our sponsors. You'll find them in the right-hand corner when you get our right-hand margin when you get to our site, including deep discount. Be sure to click on them and start shopping away. We hope all of you have a safe 4th of July holiday. Happy Canada Day to our friends out there, which was July 1st. And happy Independence Day to all of us here in the U.S. Remember, arrive alive, don't text and drive, and we'll see you next time here in the Focus Group. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.